The political battle in Texas has just escalated in a way that could reshape not only the state, but the balance of power in Washington. President Donald Trump, already pushing an unprecedented redistricting effort across the country, is now claiming his biggest victory yet. The new Texas congressional map is more than lines on paper. It is a deliberate restructuring of political power engineered to silence Democratic voices and create 5 new Republican strongholds ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. For Texas Democrats, the impact is immediate, personal, and deeply frustrating. For Republicans, it's a game-changing step in securing their majority in Congress. What makes this story so shocking is not just the size of Texas or the scale of the redistricting. It is the brazenness of the move. Trump carried Texas in 2024 with 56% of the vote. Governor Greg Abbott won re-election in 2022 with 55%. Those are solid victories, but the new map aims to translate those numbers into overwhelming congressional dominance. If the redistricting plays out as designed, Republicans could hold 30 of the state's 38 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's nearly 80% of the delegation, despite Republicans winning just over half of the statewide vote. This isn't just about math. It's about voices, communities, and values. In Pflugerville, just outside Austin, aircraft maintenance business owner Manny Rizo explains the frustration bluntly. He has lived the reality of being a Democrat in a Republican-leaning state. Losing elections is nothing new. But this time, he says, it's different. The new map deliberately splits and dilutes Democratic districts. Austin used to be anchored by 2 solidly Democratic congressional seats. Now, one of them has been carved up, shifted toward more rural areas closer to San Antonio. Those communities vote Republican. The result is simple. Tens of thousands of Democratic voters who once had a clear voice are now drowned out in red districts. Rizo calls it intentional gerrymandering, designed to control not just policy but representation itself. His concern is not theoretical. His family carries the scars of the Robb Elementary shooting in Uvalde. His 9-year-old niece, Jackie Casar, was among the victims. For him, pushing for new gun safety laws is personal, urgent, and ongoing. He knows the Republicans who dominate Austin and Washington are not going to change gun laws. But his Democratic representative, Greg Casar, has listened, responded, and engaged. Losing that representation feels like losing the only real connection his family has in Washington. This is where partisan redistricting moves from the abstract to the deeply human. Tariffs have already made running his small business harder, pushing up costs for aviation parts sourced from Mexico and Canada. But those business challenges pale compared to what he sees as a silencing of his political voice. He sums up his anger simply: Republicans claim to want smaller government, but they are using government power to decide who represents him in Congress. The new map also hits retired library director Gretchen Pruett, who lives in Kyle, just south of Austin. For decades, she has lived in a community that reflects her values. She has consistently supported Democratic candidates, including Greg Casar. Now, her community is being drawn into a district that is heavily farming and industrial. She describes it as a world apart from her suburban neighborhood. The shift guarantees that her new representative will almost certainly be Republican. For Pruett, the frustration is not just ideological. She has spent her career in public service, including fighting against Republican efforts to ban certain books from schools and libraries. With retirement, she finally has the freedom to speak openly. She now vows to channel her energy into registering voters, knocking on doors, and educating her neighbors. Yet she admits that when she talks with people about the new map, the reaction is often resignation. Many say it doesn't matter if they vote. The sense of being marginalized, of voices being silenced, is already sinking in. What makes this even more significant nationally is that Texas is not an isolated case. The redistricting push is part of a larger strategy designed by Trump and Republican leaders to hold on to power in the House of Representatives. Midterm elections historically punish the president's party. But Trump is seeking to defy history, cementing a map that maximizes Republican chances even when the margins are narrow. The Texas redistricting map is the crown jewel in that effort. This is not just about partisan politics in Austin. It is about the national stakes. If Republicans are able to lock in 5 new seats from Texas alone, they could maintain a fragile majority in Congress, even if Democrats perform strongly elsewhere. That changes how legislation is written, how investigations are launched, and how power is balanced between Congress and the White House. The implications extend far beyond Texas. At the same time, the move exposes deep weaknesses in the Democratic Party. Manny Rizo uses one word to describe it: complacency. Democrats once competed statewide in Texas. Ann Richards was the last Democratic governor, leaving office in January 1995 after losing re-election to George W. Bush. Since then, Democrats have steadily lost ground, first in rural areas, then among blue-collar workers, and more recently among Latino voters. Rizo, whose friends and employees include Latinos who now view Trump as better for the economy, points to a critical miscalculation. Democrats assumed Latino voters would remain loyal to their party. That assumption no longer holds. For voters like Pruett, the frustration is magnified by the personal impact of Trump's rhetoric. Her husband, Angel, is Mexican-American and a longtime U.S. citizen. Yet when they travel outside Austin, he carries his passport at all times, fearful of being questioned. She blames Trump for fueling anti-immigrant sentiment that makes her own family feel unwelcome in their home state. That sense of exclusion feeds into the broader anger about redistricting. Pruett sees the new map not only as unfair, but as part of a larger climate that marginalizes voices like hers. And yet she refuses to stay quiet. She says retirement has made her unmuzzled, and she plans to use her voice. The larger question is whether enough Democrats in Texas will follow her lead. Because while individual anger is real, the structural advantage created by the new map is overwhelming. Even highly motivated activists face an uphill climb in districts that have been deliberately drawn to dilute their numbers. Nationally, this moment raises bigger questions. What does it mean for American democracy when political maps are drawn not to reflect communities, but to engineer outcomes? What happens when millions of voters feel their voices no longer matter? These are not hypothetical debates. They shape who sits in Congress, who chairs committees, and which policies are even considered. For Republicans, the message is clear. They are executing a strategy that could secure long-term dominance, at least in the House. For Democrats, the challenge is equally clear. They must find a way to re-energize their base, rebuild coalitions, and convince voters that their voices still matter, even in districts designed to drown them out. All eyes are now on Texas as the 2026 midterms approach. The lines are drawn, literally and politically. The next year will decide whether Democrats can adapt to the new map or whether Republicans will solidify their hold. What happens in Texas will echo across the nation. It will influence not just the 2026 midterms, but the 2028 presidential race, the balance of Congress, and the trajectory of American politics. This is the front line of a political battle with national stakes. The next 48 hours, the next 48 weeks, the entire run-up to November 2026 will determine whether the map becomes destiny or whether voters can find a way to challenge it. Either way, the consequences will be game-changing. If you want to stay ahead of these developments, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. This is a story that is far from over, and we will continue to bring you the breaking updates, the exclusive details, and the context that cuts through the noise. Stay tuned, because the future of Texas and the balance of power in Washington is on the line.